Okay, today we're going to use the midpoint formula to find the midpoint of this nice little line segment over here. Now, if we want to find the midpoint, we could probably look at this line and say, okay, the middle's somewhere around in here. But we can't just guess. We need to actually find what it actually is. Let's take a look at these two endpoints here. We have A, which is at -2, 6. Let's consider that our first point. If that's our first point, we're going to label it x1, y1, because that's the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate. Now, if B is our second point, we're going to label the coordinates x2, y2. Now, let's take a look at actually using what's called the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula states that if you take the two x values for the separate endpoints and you divide by 2, in other words, find the average of those two x's, find the middle of the x's, and you'll have a midpoint. Let's take a look at the y values. If we find the middle of the y's, you would simply just add the two y's together and divide by 2 to find the average. So, this is an average of x, of the x values, and this is the average, my abbreviation, of the y values. Because you want to find the middle. Average is the middle. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we can do by just using this formula. We've labeled our points over here. We have x1 here, and we have x2 here. Let's substitute those in. x1 is at -2 from here. And then we have x2, which is a 4. So we add 4 according to the formula. And we divide by 2. We found the average of the x's by, we take these two x values and divide by 2. Let's continue on with our x's just so we can finish that off, okay? -2 plus 4. Well, -2 plus 4 is 2. And it's still over 2. This is right as 2 divided by 2. Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we're finished finding our x value for the midpoint. We'll call this m for midpoint. Let's take a look at the y's. How do we find the middle of the y's? Well, we take the two y values. The first one was a 6. The second one is a 2, so we add that. And we divide by 2. 6 plus 2, 8. Divide by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. We found our midpoint. Our midpoint is 1, 4. So let's test that out to make sure it looks right on our graph. Let's move over 1 and up 4. It's right here. Does that look like it's the middle? It does to me. So we call that 1, 4. We drew it on our graph. And the important thing here is sometimes you're going to have a graph like we have on our picture. Sometimes you might just be given points. For example, I could have just given you A is -2, 6, and the other endpoint B, which was 4, 2. And you would have had to find the midpoint just by simply using this nice little formula up here. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the formula. I would like you guys to either highlight it or star it, because this is the formula you will be using at different points throughout the year. So, you'll need this. It'll be on your reference sheet, but it's kind of nice to have it memorized. It's easy to know it. It's just the average of the x's, adding the two x's, divide by 2. Average of the y's, add the two y values, divide by 2. That's it for midpoint formula. We'll try one on example 2 in just a